Hi, I'm Don from DonDronesOn. Well, the new Canadian drone regulations are finally here after many years of preparation and waiting. And like the old Clint Eastwood movie, there's the good, the bad, and yep, the ugly. Let's dive in. The 2025 Canadian RPAS regulations were announced on March 26th via the Canada Gazette 2, the official newspaper of the Canadian government, and the mechanism they use to announce new laws. The information was in the form of a very, very long list of amendments to the 2019 regulations, about 50 pages or so of detailed adds, changes, and deletes. Now, fortunately, Transport Canada published a nice summary of the changes on their drone safety website, which help interpret the changes, at least in a high-level way. I encourage you to read their summary. Over the coming weeks, I will be publishing a complete refresh of 3 of my study guides to help you understand all of these rules and what you need to know for the basic and advanced exams. At this point at least, I do not intend to create detailed videos or study guides for the new Level 1 Complex Pilot Certificate, RPAS Operator Certificate, or medium drone regulations, since these are not really for most recreational or small commercial drone pilots. In this video, I'll focus on 7 key changes in the 2025 regulations that you should be aware of. The first of these is the surprise requirement for an SFOC when flying a sub 250 gram drone at an advertised event. And yes, that's the ugly in the good, the bad, and the ugly. The next 2 items are the bad: increased registration fees and the new SFOC fees. We'll then look at the good things: new flexibility in operations for advanced pilots, a set of rules for flying huge, okay, medium-sized drones, and operations beyond visual line of sight. And finally, a number of interesting tweaks to the regulations. Again, a mix of good and bad, with some dumb thrown in. Effective April the 1st, 2025, flying a sub 250 gram drone, or micro drone as Transport Canada likes to call them, at an advertised event will require an approved SFOC, or Special Flight Operations Certificate. An advertised event is defined as an outdoor event that is advertised to the public, like a concert, festival, market, or sporting event. The thinking behind this is that generally there are lots of people at events like this, so a higher risk of an injury if there's an accident. So TC would like to control who can fly at them. I have a full video about why I think this new requirement is an absolute overkill, and DPAC has submitted a formal request to have the rule rescinded. But in the meantime, here's what it means. First of all, think hard about whether the event you're intending to film is actually publicly advertised. We've asked TC about some gray areas, such as Facebook advertising. If you decide to apply for an SFOC, start from the TC Drone Safety website. I'll leave a link in the description below. You'll need to submit your application 6 weeks in advance of the event. And when you do so, the key task ahead of you is completing what they call a compliance checklist. And your answer to that checklist could easily be over 10 pages long, including a description of the operation, risks and mitigation, site survey details, and so forth. The way the form is currently worded also implies that you need to be an advanced pilot and that you'll need liability insurance to be approved. But we're seeking clarification from TC whether those requirements apply to microdrones. Oh, and just to add to the fun, there will be a fee of $75 to submit an advertised event SFOC starting on November the 4th, 2025. Stay tuned for updates on this whole topic. The second update in the regulations is a doubling of the registration fee to $10. Thankfully, this does remain a one-time fee per drone, and it still doesn't apply to drones under 250 grams. Many of us requested a fleet rate be offered, particularly for RC aircraft folks who often have lots and lots of aircraft models, but TC did not implement that. By the way, everywhere I say drone in this video, I mean both drones and RC aircraft. Drone is just easier to say. The $10 fee is effective as of April 1st, 2025, and is indexed to the Consumer Price Index, along with other fees being introduced. So expect fees to be inching upwards over the years. Speaking of fees, item 3 is the introduction of fees for SFOCs, which all used to be free. The fees, which range from $20 to $2,000, kick in on November the 4th, 2025. So right now they're still free. This table shows the range of 4 levels of complexity, from very low, which is basically allowing a foreign pilot to fly recreationally, to high complexity, such as carrying people on board or explosives on your drone. If you submit an SFOC application, then choose to change the dates or the location or stuff like that, there will be a $60 fee for your amendment. Now, the most concerning part here is, of course, advertised events, which are considered low complexity with a fee of $75 a pop. By the way, emergency responders are exempt from the fees. Okay, those are the nasty bits in the new regulations. Now let's turn to the more positive things. First up are 2 new flexible operations available to advanced drone pilots, both of which will be permitted as of November the 4th, 2025. Here are the TC definitions of them. The first is extended VLOS operations, meaning an operation of a remotely piloted aircraft that is not in visual line of sight, but during which unaided visual contact is maintained with the airspace in which the aircraft is operating in a manner sufficient to detect conflicting air traffic and other hazards and take action to avoid them. Sheltered operations, on the other hand, means an operation of a remotely piloted aircraft that is not in visual line of sight and during which the aircraft remains at a distance of less than 200 feet, 61 meters measured horizontally, from a building or structure, and at an altitude no greater than 100 feet, 30 meters, above that building or structure. Not clear? Let's walk through them with pictures. Extended VLOS. Imagine you're flying a mission where the drone needs to be quite far away, but you can still see the block of airspace where it's flying. You must have 1 or more trained spotters or visual observers to help you, and they need to have at least a basic drone pilot certificate. The drone can be up to 3.7 kilometers or 2 nautical miles away from the pilot, control station, and spotters. A spotter must have a clear view of the airspace where the drone is operating, sufficient to see conflicting manned aircraft or other hazards. For this rule, your drone must be a small RPA, and you need to be in uncontrolled airspace. The only other catch is that you need to ensure the drone remains at least 30 meters away from bystanders, which frankly is going to be a bit tricky to determine at these distances. Extended VLOS is going to be great for people who need to fly missions in low-risk situations out of direct visual line of sight to the drone. As long as your spotter can see the airspace where the drone is flying in order to watch out for aircraft, and you meet the other requirements, you're good to go. Sheltered operations are quite a bit different because you don't require a spotter. In a sheltered operations scenario, you're wanting to fly your drone behind a building or other structure. Perhaps you're doing a real estate shot or simply filming an interesting building. This will be permitted as of November the 4th as long as the drone stays relatively close to the building, no more than 30 meters above it and within 60 meters horizontally away. Assuming you can still see your drone when it's not behind the building, you can be up to 3.7 kilometers away. And just like extended VLOS operations, you need to stay 30 meters away from bystanders. Both sheltered operations and extended VLOS operations do not require any special licensing. Anyone with an advanced RPAS pilot certificate can do these types of operations. Item 5 on the list of changes in the regulations is a whole set of rules for flying larger drones from 25 to 150 kilograms. Drones of this size previously required an SFOC to fly, but now can be registered and flown by any advanced or level 1 complex drone pilot. Now I'll get to that level 1 complex stuff in a few minutes. These rules are for flying within visual line of sight, but medium drones can also be flown in BVLOS, beyond visual line of sight operations, using the next set of rules that I'll discuss. Normal restrictions around aerodromes and controlled airspace apply. TC has defined a new set of technical standards for safety, and these drive more conservative distances for bystanders, either 152 meters, 30 meters, or closer, depending upon the safety criteria met by the drone. I would say this set of rules really doesn't help most recreational flyers, except maybe those with very large RC aircraft. But even for them, meeting the technical standards may be tough to prove. So really, medium RPAS regulations are for short-range commercial operations such as agricultural spraying drones or for testing of cargo drones. So now we get to lower risk BVLOS operations, which is really the big deal in this set of rules, even though again, it is not likely to help recreational flyers. Lower risk BVLOS operations, and I assume there's a higher risk set of rules coming later, has three main requirements. First, the operation must meet a set of flight restrictions, which really boil down to being in a very isolated location. Secondly, the pilot needs to have the new Level 1 Complex Pilot Certificate, and the pilot also needs to fly under something called an RPAS Operator Certificate, which can mean an organization, business, or even an individual. There's a lot to unpack here, but I'll try to keep it simple. Lower risk BVLOS flights are very tightly restricted, basically flying in isolated areas with good visibility. You need to be in uncontrolled airspace, 9 kilometers from any aerodromes in the CFS or WAS, including even heliports, and in low population areas. For small RPAs under 25 kilograms, you must stay away from areas with more than 25 persons per square kilometer. Medium drones from 25 to 150 kilograms are even more restricted, basically only in unpopulated areas. By the way, the Drone Pilot Canada app and NRC drone site selection tool will soon offer features to visualize these restrictions. Flights need to be on days with good visibility, and then there are some technical, operational, and design restrictions as well. In order to fly a lower risk BVLOS flight, you'll need to get a Level 1 Complex Pilot Certificate, essentially a step up from an advanced certification. You need to attend 20 hours of ground school specifically addressing Level 1 complex topics, pass the new Level 1 complex exam, pass a new type of flight review, and finally pay up $125 for the certificate. And if that isn't enough, you need to operate under an organization, or well, an entity anyway, that holds an RPAS Operator Certificate or RPAC. By the way, the medical requirements that were originally in the proposed regulations for Level 1 complex certifications have been put on the back burner. An RPAS operator is the drone version of a manned aviation aircraft operator, an entity responsible for managing, maintaining, and operating one or more aircraft. While theoretically an individual could hold an RPOC, it's really designed to be held by a business or organization. To meet the requirements for an RPOC, you need to implement a long list of requirements embodied in an RPAS operations manual. Defined roles and responsibilities, processes, standard operating procedures, a training program, pilot qualification requirements, and more. A key part is also the implementation of a safety management system. Now, if you're able to meet all of these requirements, you can submit a declaration to Transport Canada along with a $125 fee to get your RPOC. Let's finish off this video with a selection of interesting tweaks to the regulations, most of which kick in on November the 4th. The first is a great one. Finally, if you have a drone pilot certificate, you can allow someone else without a pilot certificate to fly a drone under your direct supervision. This relaxation of the rules allows you to train someone, introduce a younger person to the hobby, or just let someone try out your drone, as long as you are directly supervising and you yourself are permitted to perform that operation. The trainee or whoever doesn't need a pilot certificate. There are two new procedural requirements. The first one, well, frankly, it's a bit silly in my opinion. We need to have a written procedure for how to get out of the way of other aircraft and hazards. The second one is also strange. Site surveys now need to include something called predominant weather and environmental conditions. I'm really not sure how it will help to know that it is, well, usually warm on April the 4th, even though it's cold today. Knowing the predominant weather for your flight is, yes, an interesting idea for medium or long-term flight planning, but this shouldn't be a legal requirement for every flight. We'll see what we can work into the Drone Pilot Canada app to help with this. The next tweak are two rules that were more or less implied in the old regulations. If your drone has inadvertently flown into controlled airspace or a Class F restricted zone, or if that is even likely to occur, you need to call air traffic control or the prison warden or whoever is the appropriate authority for that zone. And that Class F rule now applies even to sub 250 gram drones. Next is that you no longer need an SFOC to operate within 3 nautical miles of a D&D aerodrome. You just need to get the airbase's approval. This is good. And finally, we're allowed to have snowflakes on our drones, as long as they're limited to surfaces that are not deemed critical. With that, I'll sign off for now. I hope you've learned a bit about the new regulations. Stay tuned for more videos. Subscribe if you haven't already done so, and yeah, hit that notification bell to be informed of my new videos. Thanks for watching.